cloud. Okay, as always, ask questions along the way. As always, let me know if you can't see something or you can't hear me or whatever. Also, let me know if my mic makes scratchy noises. I'm wearing my scratchy mic tonight because I can't find my other one. So let me know. I'll try and, actually I could probably try and, I'm routing this appropriately enough through a hole in my shirt. Sorry, that was a terrible joke. Okay. I don't know if this is going to work or make it better or worse. You have to let me know. Okay, plug back in. Here we go. So React Router, what is it? Like, what are we doing? Who has used it? Who can tell me? Like, help me out. What are we doing with React Router? Why are we even here talking today? Any thoughts?
Well, aren't we using it like we do JavaScript, kind of on a one page, so you're not going back and forth to the server?
Yeah, exactly. So there's no, and there really is no server to refresh, right? We're displaying with JavaScript, so that's exactly right. I think that was Sally, correct. Like, just the same way you might have in your JavaScript application. Some of you might have, some of you might not have. We're not having a full, there is no HTTP request to sort of reload because there's no server loading our code. It's all React, right? So what's our React server, you might say? I guess you could say, you should say React server, I guess, but it's not like the sort of HTTP reload we're used to with Rails if we're not, if we're using Rails. So let's say Women's World Cup React Router 2019, I guess, something like that. That was a long title. And so let's see. Let that thing load for just a moment. And when we talk about routing in React, what tools do we need? How do we even get this going? Who can help me out there? Anyone?
But you need React Router?
React Router, okay. That's certainly like sort of tool number one that we need. What else do we need? Anything else? It's kind of a trick question, I guess. React Routers, what's that?
React.
We need React. I mean, that's really it. That's the tools you need. And like, it's not, I ask because it's like a lot of times when we go to build something, it's like, what do I need to make this happen? And you learn all these libraries, and you learn all these tools. It's like, what are the ingredients here? And the ingredients here are actually rather simple. I didn't want to run this until I had a suggestion from the audience, but in hindsight, maybe I should have run it beforehand, but that's okay. So while this thing loads, let's talk a little bit high level, right, conceptually. When we route on an HTTP request, like such as in Rails, we're sending a brand new request. The server receives our request, sends back, and replaces, basically wipes everything out, right? Because HTTP is stateless. So wipes everything out with a brand new HTTP request. We have a fresh page to look at that's completely different from what we had before. React Router is a little bit different, right? React Router, we can pick and choose what that even means to change routes. Maybe when we change routes, we're going to replace everything the user sees on the screen. Maybe we're only going to replace some small piece. Maybe one thing will disappear and something else will show up. Maybe we have to talk to a server. Maybe we don't. Maybe we stay entirely on the front end. So we get all this kind of versatility, which is a really nice thing. So let's see. Now we've got this thing going. Women's World Cup, blah, blah, blah. Let's open this up and start it. And real quick, we're going to build like some basic components, like fast, because I want to get through building components rather quickly to at least get started. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm just going to kind of do it. You guys can help out. You can suggest what kind of views would we want to see here? What does it make sense to be able to see? So meanwhile, we'll go to localhost 3000, or we'll see our familiar friend, the spinny React thingamajig. Hopefully. Okay. Is it running yet? It's thinking about it. All right. So let's go here and let's just quickly, I'm going to build a folder for components. Components. We're not going to use Redux tonight. This is going to focus strictly on React. Of course, you could use React Router with or without Redux. Redux is just state management and functionality management. Right? That's all it is. You can do everything in React with and without Redux, and vice versa for the most part. So just kind of throwing that out there. What components do we want? So we should probably have like, what do you all want to see? Teams? Does that make sense?
Teams is fine. Keep it simple.
So I'm going to say teams and a new file for like team card, right? This is just, I'm just kind of a little bit spitballing, I guess. Let's say players. Now I don't even know if I'm going to use all these, but that's okay. Player card, JS. How about like, oh man, I don't know. Do we want to? This is pretty good to get started. So let's think about what each of these things is. Let's see, import React from React. Cool. And let's say this one's probably going to be stateful. Maybe class players extends React component int and export default players. Okay. Let's say we have a constructor, and let's say we need a render, which returns some kind of JSX, probably like a bunch of players or something like that. For now, we'll just say a string players. And
don't you need super in the
yes,
constructor?
I do. Thank you. Before I reference this, I certainly do. Okay, do we have our spinny guy? Great. So let's see, app.js. Going to import players from components players. .js, and we can keep our header if we want. Say players. Okay, and let's see if that saves and works, or if we broke anything. It's thinking about it. Successful compilation. Okay, expected a spring or class function, got an object. We likely forgot to export. Probably just forgot to save that. And this is running slow again. I've been having issues with this thing running slowly during meetings. Okay, hopefully that helps. There's players. Okay, let's get rid of all this stuff because that's not really going to be helpful for us. Get rid of this whole header. So now we have players. And I'm just going to kind of duplicate this. I'm not too concerned with like whether these things are functional or class. That's not really what I want to focus on here. So let's think about what this thing actually would do. I'm just going to mock like a fetch request, like const players equals some array. And what should each player have? Like a name. Do you all know some players?
Alex Morgan.
Alex Morgan, of course.
Carly Lloyd.
Carly, please correct my spelling.
That's okay.
If it needs to be. Oh wait, these are multiple players. What's Alex's number? I forget. She number.
I don't know the numbers.
12, 30.
Okay, don't waste time. Throw a number in.
Okay, I'll say 12. This is terrible because it's probably wrong. So let's see. Alex Morgan. Who else? You said Carly Lloyd?
Yeah.
Is it I or Y? I forgot. Lloyd. We'll
Not
say
that
number
big.
30. I don't know numbers. I apologize. Please correct me. I feel like almost like unpatriotic not knowing these numbers. Who else do we have?
Crystal Dunn.
Is Crystal, is that with an E or just no E?
I think no E, but I don't know.
We'll say she's number 20. And let's see, Alyssa Nay. Alyssa Nair, like that? Naeher, she's number 1. That's probably like one more is fine. This is Becky Sauerbrunn, number 4. Okay, cool. So I have some players. This is kind of like, this is mocked up. I'm not going to build a backend for this. Not for tonight anyway. Uh-oh. That shouldn't be there. So we'll say we already have some state with some players in here. And we're probably going to map through here and create player cards. I think that makes sense. Yeah, why not? So if let's see. We don't need this. None of this, none of this, none of that. And by the way, on the final, there could be a question. How do you change a class component to a functional component or vice versa? That's an H4 with name and we'll just say name and number as a header. That's all we really need. This is all for kind of demonstration anyway, so. Okay, so now I need that in players. Player card from, yes, elaborate on that, on what I just mentioned about changing. So we want students to understand the difference between class components and functional components, right? That's a black and white difference. Either we declare a class or we declare a function using, in this case, an anonymous arrow function expression. You can also use a regular old function expression. You can also use a function declaration. Any of those will work. But if it's a function as a component, then it's a functional component as opposed to a class. And so if you have a functional component, you might be asked, for example, translate this from a functional component that it is now to a stateful, a class component, and maybe we'll add some state to it. So you should be able to say, okay, basically the reverse of what I just did. I would change this to class. I would open this up into a class. I would realize that my props are going to be coming as an object under this dot props, right? And so I can't destructure quite the same way that I have done here. And then I would have to have a render method as well, right? So those are kind of be able to go from one to the other is something we would expect you to do as a student. Final assessment, which I guess is kind of like a final exam. Yeah, good question. Does that make sense? Questions? Cool. All right, what do we have on? Parsing number, let's see, player card equals, we forgot the arrow. I forgot the arrow, you guys didn't forget anything. You're like, why is he doing this? Okay, arrow, there it is. And player card is defined but never used. That's because I want to map through these things. And I'm going to return players, this.state.players.map. For each player, we're going to return a player card. We will give this thing a prop of player, which equals the player. And we need to close it. And we also need to give it a key so it doesn't complain.
And Emma Carstairs is great.
What's that?
Like the next Jason.
I think I just heard some, is that a question or do we have some background noise?
Also, you from Emma, Julian, and public review.
If you're not asking the question, please mute your mic. But if you are asking a question, please ask. Okay, I never saved that. That's why we're seeing React. And now we see these players. This is good news, right? And so basically what we're thinking is this is kind of like an index view, right? And maybe I'd want to be able to click on one of these, and we're going to have to add a little information, I guess, to see. So what I wanted to show is this kind of in the context of like at least some of the familiar RESTful CRUD actions that you're used to seeing. Right now, this feels like an index view, but I'm also seeing kind of some details there. And so I might even just do something like, well, we'll talk about this is where we're going to talk about React Router. So this is good. This is a good enough. I think this is good enough to get started. We have players and player cards, and we can think about like what a player sort of show view would look like versus a player versus like a player's index or something like that. So what I want to do is in my browser, which I'm going to go ahead and split these open a little bit so we can look at these things separately, the browser and the editor. Make this a little bigger for you to see and open up my command, my DevTools.
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah, sure.
I'm seeing the way you code this, and what brought me here is I'm working on route links as well. Actually, I passed them, but I didn't get a good grasp yet. Mm-hmm. What would be the mindset to have while working through this? Because I'm seeing a little bit of a MVC, just like a sprinkle of MVC here as well, where one file connects to another one, and you kind of call it in between.
So the M part of MVC is kind of like a weird in React and Redux. If we think about in React, I'll just start with React, right? When we think of M, that's the model, right? That's the information and sort of some object that before, like with Rails and Sinatra in the true MVC structure, we had this is where we hold our information, mm-hmm. which we can still have. We can still have a database that's like our main source of truth that we want to keep current, and our app should be a reflection of that database information. The VC part has been like, so the C part is kind of trapped in both worlds. The controller part is what I mean. Because mm-hmm. you still have, if you're hitting an API, you still have controllers handling data. Mm-hmm. But React itself is kind of also both the V and the C. And especially once you have router involved here. Because now you have like this mini controller on the front end. And of course, our Vs are all of our components, right? Those are all our views. Each component represents a view, some tiny view. The same way that our view templates did in Rails, right? Correct. There's no real difference there in terms of, it's just a template for some chunk of HTML. That's it. That's all these things are, whether it's a Rails view, whether it's a React component. They have the same job. Gotcha. So that's the V, right? Yeah. We've taken V from Rails, in this case anyway, and put it on the front end now in React. And the C kind of lives in both worlds. We still have a controller on the front end that's controlling the React application. And by controller, I use a giant asterisk there. Where are we going to put our routes, right? That's what I kind of mean.
Right.
On the back end, we still have our controllers no longer necessarily giving us template views, but still processing information. So we kind of like double the C. I kind of like that you asked this question because it's kind of, you kind of get this like duplicate controller, one on the front, one on the back end.
Gotcha.
And you might not have that, right? If you build a single page React application where all your components are always showing, then like the controller part of it still lives maybe more on the back end. But we're going to show like how we can sort of put a controller, so to speak, on the front end. And your models, your back end might still hold like the main state, but your front end also has now this state as well. And so it's sort of this duplication of information. But we need it because React is temporary. As soon as you close your browser, it's gone, whereas your database lives on. In this case, we're not going to build a database like tonight. So we're kind of, everything is on the front end here.
Okay.
I don't know, is that answer? I hope it helps your question, or if that's what you meant, kind of.
Yeah,
like, where does MVP live
I get the gist of it. I guess the gist of it. Simply put, in my mind, like I try to make it simple. It's simply there's two controllers. You have the back and you have the front end. There's a nice bridge in between in which both could fetch information as needed. The only difference is in Redux now, our routers kind of act as a controller in which they kind of call the information that is already present in the front end of it.
So Redux isn't really going to be like, if we think about controllers, being like a hub of what's showing, then like Redux isn't necessarily going to control that. That's still going to be more React. Like Redux is going to be information handling, informational handling and like actions, which still affect, I shouldn't say it still affects what we're going to see, but it's just kind of a little bit of a different scenario, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
So what I want to draw our attention to is if we look at app has no props and currently no state. I didn't add any state to app yet. Props is an empty object though. So notice like there are no props, but still it still says it's here. It's just an empty object. Players has no props and has state of an array of 5 players. Each player card has a player object as its state, or excuse me, as a prop. Okay, so I just want to look at those things. Like what are the props? What is the state that's going on here? So let's bring in React Router. Where should I put React Router? And that's always a good question. Students are always like, oh my gosh, where do I put it? Where do I put these things? So help me out. Let's make a decision. Where should we put our React Router? Where do I import it? And this is not necessarily an only question. Like this is not. What would you think about when you say like, where should I put this stuff? Where should I put my routes? Where should they live?
The container component?
Yeah, a container component's a good answer, right? That's a great place to start. Why do you even say that, Daniel? Why would you say container component? Why wouldn't player card be a good place to put my routes?
I ask a question. When do we use container and when component?
I'm sorry?
When do we use container and when do you use component?
When do I use those words separately?
No. When do you put a file inside a container or as opposed to a component?
So that's a really good question. And container, so as I mentioned before, class and functional components are black and white. It's either one or the other. And you look at it, you can tell. It either starts with the keyword class as a component, and it's a class component, or it starts with as a function of something. There's 3 ways to define a function or declare a function. 2 ways. 1 way to declare, 2 ways to define function expressions, to be a little more proper maybe. But when it comes to container versus, like containers opposite, so to speak, is presentational. And those are a little bit, and some of you have heard me say this before, those are a little bit more vague terms. Container just usually refers to a component. First of all, a container is a component. But it's going to be a component that like holds other components. So a container might represent a larger chunk of the DOM that you're looking at and hold several other components, whereas a presentational component is of itself displaying you something. So a container component just like holds other components. So that's a great question. Does that make sense what I just said?
So let's say you had a user was submitting something that would go in a component. Would we then render it directly to the app.js, or would you want to put it in a container and then the container then is rendered in the app?
Not sure if I follow the question exactly. Like in this, so let's look at the example we have right now. We have app. App is a container. If you look at app, what is it? What do we have here? Nothing that the user like sees in terms of HTML. All it's doing is spitting out players. That's another component. So you might say app is a very small container. Even players, we might say is a container. Players really returns no HTML other than a bunch of other components. So really, player card is the one and only presentational component that I have in this entire app, which makes sense. If you look here, each of these is just a player card. But I'm not sure. Maybe you could ask your question again as far as like if I submit something.
Maybe he's saying like if you have a form in your component, would that be in a container or would that be in a presentation component?
A form might be its own component.
So is that going to be a specific one or the other?
Well, a form of itself is like presentational, right? You're showing the user something that they're interacting with. But a form could live in a container component, right? You could have like an HTML form written in there, or you could build a component that's just a form itself. So it's up to you.
The way I remember it is like the containers data fetching, and then the presentation is just rendering HTML. Yeah,
that's basically it. Don't get too caught up in like trying to like define what's a container, what's a presentational component. Like I think that's less important than building an app that makes sense to you and renders well. You know, that definition is just a fuzzy definition. It's just like it's much more loose, right? It's not, I don't think it's a hard and fast thing that you should focus too hard on. But a container just holds other components. And then finally, when you get down to a component that's literally showing you HTML like specifics, that's probably a presentational. And there could be a combination container that also shows some HTML. But eventually we could clean up our apps where containers only render other components, and finally you sort of land, each end is like a presentational component that shows a tiny chunk of the HTML somewhere. Hopefully that makes sense. Did I come close to answering, or like less clear, more clear?
No, it answered.
Okay, awesome.
What I was curious about was like, do you want it on the top level component? That's what I meant by like a container. You want it on the top level so that the componentry, so that way it could be used by the children. Okay, so yes, great. So let's hold this thought. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. I'm gonna play with this. So I'm going to import. And what's that? What's like the main thing we need to get started with Router?
Import React Router.
Import and React. I'm going to say BrowserRouter. Does that sound right? Right? That's like the big guy, right? From, and where do I get this from?
React Router DOM.
React Router DOM. Is that it?
Yeah.
Let's see. So let's see if it complains at us. If it's still compiling. We'll watch it compile.
So Howard, the BrowserRouter, that's a name you decided to use.
No, that's a named export. That's why it's wrapped in curlies like this.
Gotcha.
If this thing has a default export, I could lose the curlies and call it whatever I want.
Okay.
So it looks like we compiled. We didn't have errors, so I think that must be right. And BrowserRouter, sometimes you'll see this, other times you'll see this. Now let me backstep on what I just said. I can call it whatever I want if I use the as. I could call this thing potatoes if I wanted to, I think. I think I can call it anything. I don't want to confuse you with potatoes, but you can do whatever you want. A lot of people say as router, just you don't have to type as big of a name. That's literally it, right? You can just do this. I'll leave it this way, and well, whichever way you're more comfortable with. Would anyone rather have me say as router? I don't care. Is that more comfortable for folks?
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
it's awesome.
Okay. So I need to then use router as the name. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to return something that's fully wrapped in router. So I'm going to say now router is my outer wrapper here, and I want to watch how things change. Router. I have to remember how to close things. There we go. So now I've wrapped the return of app. Whatever I'm returning from app, I'm wrapping in router. What I want to look at first, let's make sure it compiled. I think it did. Okay. Let's now look at app. And I still only see an empty object for props. There's BrowserRouter. Like, okay. So now let's look at its children. There's router. And notice that there are suddenly some props coming in here. Children and history. And then also there's the state of match. Like what? Hold on. I didn't have these. I didn't do this. This is what router gives us. It gives us props and state on our children. Going forward. Now look at the, so like players has no props, player card, no props, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like, let's have a look here and see like what we can do. Maybe I actually want to take this router and bump it up, right? So maybe app is not the right place. Maybe I actually want to wrap all of app in BrowserRouter. And let's see what happens if we do that. Whoops, why? That's not what I wanted. So I'm going to pull this thing out here and actually put it in my index.js. And this is kind of what I like to do a lot. Import BrowserRouter as router from React Router DOM and app.js. We're going to pull this guy and this guy. Save that and look at our index.js. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually wrap all of app in my router. /router. Okay, and save that. And now, if I look, I can see that that now router is wrapping everything, and I've got this props and history and match and all this stuff. So now what I want to do is think about how can I actually use this thing. Suppose that, and I really should have more than just players, I guess. Let's add teams real quick. This shouldn't take too long because teams is going to be a lot smaller. So I'm going to copy the entirety of players, put it in teams, change, whoops, this would be in team card, sorry. So this should take, oops, yep. This would be team card. Teams are just going to be USA. What are some good, strong women's teams? Not Thailand, I know that. Sorry, Thailand.
Brazil.
Brazil. That's probably good enough for now. I don't know what numbers they would have. 1, 2, 3. And we're not going to we don't have nested relationships here or anything. This is going to be teams. Teams. And cool, we still have a name. Good. Okay, and then teams, going to be all the players.
So you have to switch the key in teams?
Probably. No, I don't think so. I just used name.
Oh, okay.
I think that should work. What happened? Did I just, oh, that's what happened.
Oh, I meant the key for the props.
On which one? Which one are we talking about? Team card? I still have name.
On line 29.
So this .state.teams.map team card key is.
Oh, it's going to be a player. Okay.
I mean, it should. You're right. I should change this. This should be This should be team.
Players. Is it going to be players?
Thank you, team. This guy. That's what you meant. Thank you. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. And I should really change this to T now for team. I'm being very lazy there. You're 100% right. That should change. Thank you. Cool. And this one was going to just change these out. Team. Wait. What happened here? Did I just do something really silly? I don't know what I just did. Teams, team. I just made this change in this one. I'm so confused what I just did. This is what I want here. Okay, so this looks like teams, right? Teams.
Right. On your team card, you need to change your export default.
Teams. Yeah, this doesn't look like a team card at all, though, does it? What did I do wrong there? I thought I did this already. I guess this is the part I didn't do at all. There. Okay, that's much better. So to get teams, that's rendering a bunch of teams. Players I didn't build yet. Oh, that's what I did. That's what I did before. Oh, crap. Okay, real quick. Sorry about that. I screwed that up. Teams is where I want this as actually now players, or as teams. And we'll just go again, sorry for the rewrite. USA, Thailand, Brazil, and Canada. We'll say number 1, 4, 2, and 3. And we don't need Becky. There, that makes a little more sense, I think. If we didn't totally screw that up, or if we did totally screw that up, React will tell us. So I've got players now and teams. Right now as separate components. Teams. Okay, let's see. No way we got that right. Thank you. Okay, teams is not defined because I didn't import it. Okay. Teams. All right. Players is not defined. Where's that coming from? in team. Okay, I didn't quite get it right.
In your class, you need teams for state.
Thank you. Well, I did a terrible job on that copy paste, didn't I? Team card is not defined in teams because I didn't import it. Import team card from teamcard.js. Any chance that's our last error? Okay, so now I've got my players up here and my teams down there, and that's not really what I want. And just to be a little more verbose, I guess we'll turn this into a div so that I can shout it out like which one's which. This is teams, and let's just make that a header. Just to be clear that that's what this is. And which means this now needs to be wrapped. Cool. And we'll kind of do the same thing for players. I'm just going to wrap this in a div. So that I can put a header. H2, this is players. Okay. Okay, what are the chances that's appropriate or works? Good. Players and teams. This is exactly what I want to show now. Okay, great. So now we go back to app. And what I want to do is I want to be able to show, I want to be able to not see both of these, right? I want to be able to show one or the other. So I want to be able to choose, like I either want to see players or I want to see teams. So how is this going to work? Like, how do I make that happen? Any thoughts? Sorry, there's a quick Redux question. I know we're not using it, but would store go inside or outside of the router? I don't think it matters. Are you asking whether I choose to wrap provider and then BrowserRouter or vice versa? Like provider, then BrowserRouter, then app? Or BrowserRouter, then provider, then app? I don't think it makes any difference because what they're both doing is pumping up whatever that center one is with more props. You can play with that and sort of, if I'm right or wrong on that, that's fine. I don't think it matters. Don't think it matters at all. Either way, you end up with more props in the component in the center. Or more functionality, whatever it is. So how can I do this? Who's had some experience? Who can help me out? What do I need here? Basically what I want to be able to do, and let me just kind of, what I imagine is something like maybe like a nav bar or something, like a couple buttons. So maybe I have a div up here. Div, this is like my nav or something like that. And I have like a button or something, like something that I click on that takes me, something I click on that takes me to teams and something I click on that takes me to players. That's what I have in my mind here, something very simple.
So some type of handler?
Sort of like a handler, but like React Router gives me this sort of handling. What do I need to do? Like what are some thoughts here? What can we do?
Sorry.
What should I have here? What do we think? Any thoughts?
Kind of link to the router, just play one or the other.
Yeah, I need some sort of a link. So like, let's think of it this way. Basically what I want this to be is now like, I want only one of these things to show up. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to import some stuff now from, I'm going to grab switch and route, again, from React Router DOM. Okay, let's just make sure we didn't break anything, that we can actually get those things. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want these things to kind of act as routes. And so I'm going to start with switch. Does anyone know what switch does for us?
Is that the one that changes the URL up top?
No, not exactly.
Oh, okay.
What switch does is it only allows us to match one route at a time, kind of like a switch statement. In fact, I think that's why it's called switch. If you don't have switch, there's a chance that you'll match and return and like show multiple things, like more than one thing within our routes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say route, and so now I'm going to use this this route component, and let's see what it can do. So I'm going to say route. I don't remember if I need, yeah, no, that's fine. Route, something like that. No, that's not right. Here we go. What I want to say is like what do I need to do here? Like, who can help me out? How do I tell this route like what it should match and what it should do if it does match?
You're going to use a condition. You're going to have an else statement in there.
Not exactly. I'm not going to put like regular looking JavaScript logic inside of here.
Can you use a ternary?
No, not a ternary. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to use sort of JavaScript logic per se.
Do you use path?
Yeah, okay, what's path going to do for us?
It defines like the URL, so like for the root one, you would do exact path.
Okay.
Equals.
What does exact do for me?
It's if like you only have on the URL like a /.
Yep.
Go to the root.
Yeah, exact means no deviation from this thing, right? It's not a partial match. I want exactly this thing to match. Now, what else can I put here? Now we're on the right track. And by the way, like I shouldn't have poo-pooed what was said before about like logic and things like that. You can, 100%, if you need to, you can put some logic inside of here. We're inside of JSX. We can insert logic if we have to. So, yeah, you can do that, right, if you need to. Question, will the assessment include questions about React Router? Yes, it can. React routes are required, right? They're part of the requirements of the application, which means that you certainly can be asked questions about this. That's a possibility for sure.
Is this called a prop? I know it sounds like,
Okay.
what exactly is path? How do you refer to
Yes,
that?
it is a prop. Yeah, these
Okay.
are props. These are definitely props. Exact, path.
Okay.
Okay. And what I'm doing is I'm telling this thing what I'm assigning these props. What's another prop I can give this thing?
The component you want to send it
component. Yes, 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 yes. So now I can point this thing at a particular component. Okay. So I can say maybe I want, in this case, players. Like that, right? Does that look right? Or do I even need?
to. Use the curly braces and you get rid of the.
Yeah, I don't think I need I don't need the JSX version. Okay, so now I have this thing that says route. Okay, and then what else? What else can I do here?
Don't you need to close the?
Yes, thank you. 100%. Yes, this thing would have. It probably was already showing me in the browser. If I would have looked, it would have said you must close your JSX tags. That's right. Thank you. So I'm going to duplicate this and do the same thing for Teams. And like, this is all hunky-dory, but who knows what we're going to see now in the browser. Okay, I see players.
Well, I was going to say no.
Well, players is the first one listed, so it's going to go with that.
Yeah, so but like, why are we seeing anything at all? What did I put as the path?
The root.
Yeah, so by the way, let's just kind of, let's get rid of switch for a second. I'm going to save that. Let's see what happens now. So even though I have two routes, they both match this thing and React is showing them both. So it seems like a conflict, but React is kind of like a hippie. It's like, no, there's no conflict. We're all playing here. And this is very often not what you want. It might be that you want to match multiple routes, but that's what switch does for us. So this is like a nice demonstration of switch. If I turn on switch, as soon as one of them is matched, none of the other ones will be looked at. So do you see how that's working? Okay, so now let's think about like, if I actually change this thing to what makes more sense, players, and I save this, we're only going to see teams. And if I change this to teams, which also makes more sense, restfully speaking, now we're not going to see anything. Okay, and if I inspect this thing, I can see I'm in my React DevTools, browser, router, app, switch, and then nothing, right? Then I've got router, history, route, all this stuff, like whatever. I've got context here. So I need now a way to actually look at these things.
Do we need a set where it doesn't match to have, let's say, a default?
Say that again?
Do we, let's say a user would type in @team and forget the S.
Oh, yeah.
Well, to send them to.
Oh, great question. That's a great question. So like, how could I put a default in here? Who can help me out?
Get rid of the path and just have a component that goes to the catch-all you want it to.
That's right. So if
Like
I do,
not found.
yeah. So if I do something like, as Daniel said, like get rid of path, and component is just like.
Get rid of exec too.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. Can I do this? Can I just do like? I think I can just do this. Not found. I'm not sure if that'll let me. We'll see. Just trying to cheat the system here a little bit. No, it doesn't like that. Okay. Will it take a string? I'm not sure if it'll take a string. No string? I just don't want to write another component. I could though, no problem. Okay, so I could do it. Let's just do it quick. I could say new component for like home. I should have capitalized that. Home, rename, or like even like no match or something like that. Home is good enough, whatever. Home, it kind of implies like a safe place, whereas we're thinking more of a mistake, but that's okay. Rename, home. Keep trying to save and not hit enter. There we go. And this is just going to be grab this, paste that, change this. We'll just say, sorry, that route doesn't match. No props. Export it, import it into app. Okay, so now I can say home. And now, so if let's see where we go with slash. Sorry, route doesn't match, right? So that's the answer. If I do something like team, right? It's exact. It didn't match. What if I get rid of exact? I say team. That didn't match. If I say teams, oops, teams/5. Notice that now it's matching. So like exact means exactly this, whatever this thing is. If I have something in this URL that matches up to a certain point and I don't have exact, notice that it went ahead and counted that as a match. So like and I'm just going to leave this for you to play with, understanding like when is router going to say, yes, this works, or yes, it matches, when is it not going to match? If I go back to just teams, exactly, I should see my teams again. Okay, questions about this is the most sort of basic setup, half of the most basic setup, I guess you might say, in terms of like, here I'm defining routes. So this is back to what Sam kind of pointed out, like a controller. This is also, I've almost kind of like built this mini controller here within in this case, within my app component. Okay, I've wrapped my entire application in BrowserRouter, which allows this sort of, I need anything that's going to take advantage of routes, the whole thing needs to be wrapped, like the smallest piece of your app that needs routes needs to be wrapped in BrowserRouter, like at least I should say. So I like to just bring it all the way up to the top level. That's my personal preference. You can change component to render. Okay, what's the difference? What is render? What's the difference between component and render? What does render expect here? What if I do that, first of all? Will that work? Fast constructor teams cannot be invoked without new. What's it complaining about? What's the difference between component and render? Who can help me out?
How should safe to say render? I think looks for some type of link or something to render, whereas component is the actual package itself.
Okay.
Render belongs to a class.
Render belongs to a class. Okay.
Does it render need to
function.
return?
Well, Teams is a class component. So like, I think we're dancing around the answer here. What if I change this to render is a lifecycle method? Yes, it is. Can you enter HTML into a render? Maybe. But like, what if I change this into a function expression that returns a component? Will that work? See the difference? And the idea is like, if I need if I need Teams, if I need something else, like what if I need to give it, I don't know, some special thing, whatever it is. I need to give more, I need to give this team some more information, right? I need to pass it along. Maybe I need to, I'm trying to think of a good example of what I would need to give this thing. But if I need to provide some information, render is expecting a function expression or a function reference here. It might be a callback even, right? And so maybe I have another, maybe up in here I have like const choose component or something like that. And like based on some state, besides ignore my spelling, maybe like look at state, this dot state dot, I don't know, logged in or something like that, logged in. If that's true, then I'm going to return like one component logged in. And otherwise, I'm going to say, you know, component logged out. And that way I can use this render, I can pass it, and maybe I'm conditionally grabbing one component or another, or something along those lines. That's maybe a cheap example, but that's the idea. Render is going to take a function, whereas component is pointing to just that, a component. Component. Good question. Render versus component. Cool. So now, like, I have the functionality, but nobody likes to mess with it. If you had me for an assessment, you know, I probably like to say, like, don't ever make the user type in the URL bar. Just don't do it. So now what? What's our next step? How can I actually use this now in a way that makes more sense?
Add some buttons.
Yeah, let's add some buttons. Where should I add the buttons?
In line with each route.
Okay, so routes, okay. Think of my routes here like, and I like that Sam said this, like a controller. And then somewhere else, we're going to put links to these routes. Okay, and what I mean by that is this. So what I need are some more, I need more here. Like, does anyone know the component I need to grab from withRouter DOM that's going to help me out here?
Isn't there a nav bar?
There's nav bar, but like, I could use nav bar. I was thinking more simple, right? Like more like just like a link. Does anyone use link before? Yeah, link, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Cool. So imagine then that I have a div up here that I'm just gonna fake this as a nav bar for now. Just to try, I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible for the demonstration, which is it's pretty simple right now. Let's see what link looks like. I'm a link, question mark. Okay, I didn't specify the to property. That's a pretty obvious, hopefully an obvious, what do you call it? Error message, right? React is very helpful. Can anyone imagine what this means I need to do?
You have to specify the route where you want it.
Yeah, exactly. I need to know where I'm linking to, and of course that's being passed as a prop here. Where do I want to go from here? And you all can choose. Where should this link go?
You can just go to the route to home or.
Okay, I can go to home. So let's see what happens if I go to home. So let's see what happens now. If it loads, it says I'm a link, and I'm going to click on it. And notice what happened up here.
Oh, cool.
It changed the route, right, on the URL, what was displayed. and it changed it to home because that's what I told it to do. Home doesn't match players and it doesn't match teams, so I ended up with that home that I built. And I hate that. I should have called this error. This should really be called error. This is bothering me that I called it home and have it as an error message. That's okay, whatever. Home doesn't match. But that's what this thing is doing. So can you imagine, what if I call this, for example, players. And let's duplicate it. And you can probably guess that I'm going to say teams. And I'm going to make this one players. And I'm going to make this one teams. Okay? So I'm going to step back for a second. Does everyone see what I just did?
Yep.
Everybody cool with that?
Mm-hmm.
So now I have, besides, I need like a break statement in here or something because it looks terrible, or like a space, or I just need CSS is what I really need. I'm just going to insert like a p tag that says something like, okay, I mean, this is terrible CSS, obviously, but you get the idea. Now you can at least see them apart, tell them apart. So if I click on players, I get players. If I click on teams, I get teams. So we've so far established the most basic example I can possibly imagine of React Router. So questions about up to now what we've done. Is exact also used in link? Let's find out. Exact. Like that, you mean? So suppose I pulled exact from players, like that, but I include it in my link. So if I click on players, it matched. If I say, let's go to players/10 and save that, and I go to players, whoops. So notice it's still matching, so exact doesn't seem to be helping me out here. Right? It's not, I'm not sure if I can, I'd have to look up whether I can actually change something here, but I've removed it from players. And so it doesn't look like I can enforce exact from the link side of things.
What's the difference between link and nav link?
Okay, let's look that up. Exact. Okay, so now I want nav link. And one of these is going to be a nav link. Let's get rid of that 10 for a second. Save that. Link, nav link. Okay. Sorry, that route doesn't match. I'm on players 10. Okay, that makes sense. Players, teams. The difference is, and I wonder if I can show this here. Nav link, active class name, aria current, children 2, link. Notice the difference in props between a link, nav link and link. Oops. Link has children replaced into teams here. Nav link has active class, aria team, aria current, children, and 2. They both have children and 2. I'm going to get this. That's a great question, and I should have a better answer off the top of my head. I should have a better answer for you here, and I don't. It's a situational. The difference is situational. Let's see what the old docs say. Difference.
I know the README for React Router is very small.
And link. Yes, it is. But we can also and really what I should do is say React Router. Make this bigger so you can see it. Maybe a little bit smaller. React Router, there it is, right? Okay. React Router. And this is just the GitHub's React training React Router. And I was hoping that this would have
On Stack Overflow, it says that the only difference is you could set an active class name and active style in nav link.
Right, and that's exactly what we sort of saw.
So I don't even know.
Based on the prompt, but I'm trying to give you an example. Like this is what Daniel just mentioned, right? Active class name. But I'm not sure what that, I can't give you a good description, like off the top of my head of what that really gives you.
Would it make the link disappear if it's not active? Because that would be cool.
It might, let's see. So like, if we go to, so let's change them both to nav links for just a second. I mean, it's something along those lines. You get a little bit more functionality out of a nav link than you do from a link in that sense. I'm just kind of failing to what's the word? See, these both show as active. Yeah, I'd have to circle back on that. You can ping me and I'll look something up so I can give you a better explanation. And I know I've had this in the past and I've talked about this in the past and it's escaping me right now to give you a good explanation of that. Right now you could use either until you come to a situation where it's like, wait, I need this little bit of functionality. So I'm gonna punt on that question, but I'm happy to come back to it. Like you can ping me and say, wait a minute, you promised an explanation, so I will provide that for you down the road. Okay. But this is like, so this is a very, very basic intro to React. Another thing that I can do sometimes is I might want to sort of, as a result of performing some functionality, such as maybe submitting a form and creating something, without the user having to press another button, suppose I go to create, in this example, a team. And maybe I have a database. I send a request to the database and I come back. If it's successful, I want to show that team's show page. And if it's not successful, I want to go somewhere else, maybe like to an error page. But I obviously don't want the user to have to click on a link to do that. So that's kind of like the last demonstration I wanted to get to tonight. We're a little bit past time. If people can stick around, I can show, again, kind of somewhat of a cheap version of that, but we can show it anyway. I'll just say button, and like this is like, imagine, we're gonna have to imagine that this is like creating something, creating a team or performing some action. It doesn't matter, like any action at all, right? Any action that you would want to go somewhere else, navigate somewhere else, depending on what happens as a result of this thing. So I'm gonna create a callback function. Called, what do I want to call it? Const button click, I guess. Handle click, how about that? Handle click. And based on something, basically, if, I don't even have any state here right now, but that's okay. The idea is like, I want to show you how we can hit one of these routes without necessarily having to click a link. That's really what I'm trying to to demonstrate here, which is, this would be like on click. And I'm going to say this.handle click. Who has done this before? Who can help me out? So suppose I want this thing, and I'm just going to say, go to Teams, but I'm not a link. Okay, this is a weird button. So that's what it is. Let's see. So let's see what it looks like. Handle click undefined. Const handle click equals. This is undefined.
Can you say this dot if it's not a class?
Oh, yeah. No, so, yeah, absolutely not. So I can just say handle click. Okay, much better. Thank you. That should work. Okay, so go to Teams, but I'm not a link. So who can help me out here? What would I need to do to make this happen? What needs to go in here? Some sort of conditional rendering. Okay, yeah, something like that. Some kind of redirect, kind of like a redirect. Yep, yep. You're all, it's on like.
Is this where we can use a ternary?
We could use a ternary, sure, but like I don't really have any information to check, really. So what if I do something like window? Do I have window, first of all? Like, let's put a debugger here. Let's see what we have available to us at this moment in time. So I'm going to save, hopefully this, oh, I just saved it. I'm going to click on this thing, and I catch in the debugger. And I want to look around. Like, what do I have? I have window, right? Window.location. Okay. Window.location.history. So then if that's undefined, then I can't call like push on that, can I? Nope. So like, does anyone know like what kind of see what I'm trying to do? Like what am I trying to think about here?
Trying to change the history, so I can't explain it, but I know what you're doing.
Okay. What if I do something like this? Can I change this thing to http://localhost:3000/teams? Okay. What happens to, did that do anything? It seemed to. And now it's like reloading. But that's not exactly like what I want to do. It's kind of the idea that I want to show. So I could do something like window.location.
Push state.
Okay, push state. Is that something I can do? Does location have a push state on it?
No, window.history.
Window.history.
That push state.
Push state like this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's check this out. So let's see, this is supposed to go to Teams. Save that. If I go to players, now if I click on this button, it doesn't like that. It says I don't, failed to execute push state on history, 2 arguments required, only 1 present. And this isn't exactly, like, there's a number of ways that we could do this to make it happen, right? I could go back to kind of the way that I did it a minute ago. I could say href equals and reassign the href, for example. Let's see. Localhost 3000 / what do I want to do? Teams? Something like that. What if I do that? If I go to players and then I click the button for Teams. Oh, sorry. Wait, what did I, sorry, window.location.href? No. Now I'm screwing up my window properties here. There we go. Window location. There we go. That's what I was trying to show. But this doesn't quite feel right. That doesn't feel very React-ish, did it? Thank you. That didn't quite feel right, at least not to me. Any ideas? Like, what else can we do besides this? Didn't that feel like we kind of had this whole, as opposed to if I click back and forth between these, it's very snappy. Can you enter a route? I could, like, could I have, well, I could turn this into a route, right? I could say this is no longer a button, it's now a route, right? A route. I don't need an on-click then, and I could just turn this thing into a route as well. I could drop a route kind of wherever, pretty much like wherever I want if I wanted to. So I could do this, get rid of that. But well, no, but I mean, sorry, I said route, and what I was thinking was link. Is that what, sorry, I think I said it one way, I meant it the other. I could turn this into a link, but the whole point is I wanted to show, right, exactly. Like I don't want the user to have to click something. So how do I then update where we are? Oops, Z. without that? Like, what's my go-to? How do I do this? Any thoughts? Has anyone done this before? You submit a form and you go someplace and then you end up somewhere else. How did you make it happen?
Redirect.
Okay. And what is that? What does redirect come from? Like, where do you get redirect?
Comes from React. React router has a redirect. Maybe write redirect to and then give it a. We had it in, I don't know. I'm not.
Oops. I just got caught up on my wrong project. Oh, I just squashed my windows. Hang on a second. There we go. Nope, that's the wrong one. I have too many windows open. Okay. Sorry, say that again. I apologize. Was that Sim?
Yeah. I know that, I don't remember what the question was.
The question is like, how do I, if I perform some sort of action and I conditionally want to change the route, the URL bar, how do I do that? How can I change it so that as a result of some action that happens, I'm going somewhere else, right? Rather than where I was. And so I don't set a new object, whatever that object is. And I get back a successful response from the back end. I don't want the user to have to like click something. Maybe I don't want a modal or a pop-up or whatever it is. I want to be able to just like go somewhere else. Kind of like we did in Rails, right? We create something and then we automatically kind of send the user like somewhere else.
Redirect.
I could redirect, right? Redirect is an option. How do I use redirect? What's that?
How to use it in React? How to use it in router?
Yeah, so, yeah, not like redirect from the back end.
You should be able to use it redirect to and then give it a path.
Okay, is that just a method that I have available like this?
I think you have to import it though on line 7.
Okay, and where's that coming from? Here? Like this? Like that?
I think so. Could be wrong.
Okay, and so then basically then instead of a button, comment this out for now. So you're saying this would be kind of like a redirect, this thing right down here? And it's kind of feeling more like a link, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, that's okay. So let's get you in the debugger again. So I want to get back in that handle click. And I want to look at function app. Suppose app is receiving props because it's just a function. Let's see what we have available as props. So if I click on go to teams, oops, I want to know what are my props. Props is not defined. Function props. Why is props not defined? I just defined it. It should be defined. That's weird. Can I not see props from the React? Yeah, I have props. What in the world? It's an empty object, but I guess if it's an empty object, I'm not getting anything here. Okay. All right. So basically, like, if I'm using, for example, like Redux or something like that, and I want to be able to like perform some action, right? Basically, the idea is I want to be able to do something like this. history.push, and just like change where I'm going, right? This is the kind of thing that we're going to be doing. History.push, in this case, like maybe to teams or something like that. Let's see what that does for us. Unexpected use of history, no restricted globals. That's saying that it doesn't know what this thing is. If I say props.history, okay. Push of undefined. So it doesn't understand like what is props.history. So how can I get access to this history thing from inside of my React application? How does that work? Does anyone know? Where would I go to find this information out? Like, how would I figure that out?
Google?
What's that? Yeah, like how to change the route, the URL when using React router after an action, right? Something like that. And it's important like that we can look these things up. And obviously this goes back exactly where I was a moment ago. Push a new route that triggers URL only, like, let's see. And
with a button or without a button?
What's that?
Are we trying to build it with or without a button?
So I'm trying to like, so as a result of some action, it could be clicking a button, it could be anything else. And one thing I want to show you is like, what is this thing with router that's being talked about?
Yeah, we have to import with router from React Router DOM.
Now we're talking with, what is that? What if I do that? What does this thing do for me? First of all, did I spell it right? Whoops. Yeah, notice that it's not capitalized, right? Which is interesting. And now notice that like nothing really has changed. But do you see, who is saying that, Sim? Like how, do you see how this is used?
Yeah, I have a whole thing on Stack Overflow.
Okay, how's Stack Overflow telling you? Like what are we doing? Are they putting it down here?
No.
No, okay.
Then it's const button equals with router. Then you deconstruct the history props.
So are you building, is that button like some kind of a component or something, or like?
Yeah, it's a component.
Okay.
And it will push the new location.
Right. And the idea is that like what I need is, like, will this work if I do it this way? Okay. Doesn't seem to be complaining. And let's look inside of like app, for example, in this case, route app. And notice that suddenly app has props it didn't have before. Did you catch that? So a minute ago, and think about, this is not much different from Redux, right? So, and I just, I'm saving this way again, right? I just took away withRouter. And if I go back and I look at app again, app, there are no props. One more time, I'm going to add withRouter. withRouter, what does that mean that withRouter is? What must withRouter be if we're seeing the behavior that when I use it, first of all, it's not capitalized, which means it's not a component. What it is, and clearly, a function, right? Otherwise, we couldn't have it this way. And it's a function that takes a component as an argument and returns a more powerful component. In this case, it's injecting props. And what it's injecting, if I actually look at the right component here, app, what it's injecting is history, location, and match. These are all around like where we are currently within our props, or sorry, within our URL, within our like current state. So now I can say props now has a history, right? Which is why it's not complaining anymore about it. And I think what you were trying to talk about, Sim, was like you were seeing an example of a component, and maybe this is what you were seeing, something like this. Is this what you saw? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Me?
Oh, was it Sim? Was it Sam? I don't know. Whoever was talking. I'm not sure. I thought it was Sim who was talking. I apologize. Was it you? I thought it was you. Was it Sim?
Oh no, it was someone else.
It was me. It was me.
Oh, so there's Sim and Sam. Sorry. We've got Sim and Sam in this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So it was Sim. Okay. So basically props, if you'll notice that we still get in app all these props. And what Sim was mentioning, that's kind of why I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to, okay, hold on. Let's see what's happening before we go to destructuring. We're getting these properties of our props object added, and so we can destructure them this way if we only want to grab the one, right? And that's what we're grabbing in this case. And that's all I need for this one. And so now let's see what happens when I click on Teams. Notice that it changes the URL and we see Teams. Go back to Players, Teams. And the advantage here is now if I take some action, right, and try to think of something like I don't have any state here that's really useful, and this is not even a stateful component, but basically like if true, something like this. I don't know, this is terrible. If true, but the idea would be like if you made some sort of a backend, if I sent something to the backend, oops. If I sent a request to the backend, based on the request, I might go one place or another, depending on whether it was successful or not. So I'll just go like home, right? So if true, we're going to Teams. I can go to Players, then I can go back to Teams this way as well. But now if I change this thing to false, like whatever, like failure from the backend, whatever that thing represents. Now, when I can go back and forth from Players to Teams with my links, and if I click this button, it's going to take me home, which of course doesn't match routes according to what we set up here. A really powerful way to be able to change state, right, anywhere basically, change the state of where we are in our URL, which is pretty handy. And we're just using a higher order function that takes a component, returns a more bulked up component. Okay, this is like, so now, and I know I'm a few minutes past where we intended to be here tonight, but this is like, these are the basics. You can take this, and there's a lot more we can do with these things. This is an intro, of course. You know, we can cover so much in this time, but like this is enough to get you going. And I highly encourage you to check out the React Router docs. You can look at GitHub. React Training has some really nice docs about this, and you can do a lot of deep diving. And we've barely scratched the surface. There's a lot more stuff and a lot more functionality that we can talk about or that you could implement. Any questions about anything we looked at tonight?
Will you be posting the code?
Yeah, I can post this code, and I can post. I can post the lecture as well. I can just put it in the student app for now, and someday I'll make a better one and replace it. Cool. Any questions? Oh wait, what? Oh, you pasted the code there. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, exactly. And that's the same thing. Notice, Sim, like what you pasted. That's basically the same thing that I did, almost exactly, ironically. But it's the same kind of demonstration. And notice that what they're doing is, in Sim's example, for just to be clear, in Sim's example, they're creating, I couldn't do it with a function expression this way, I don't think. No, I couldn't do it with a function expression, excuse me, I couldn't do it with a function declaration, but I could do with a function expression, which I find this syntax personally more confusing. This is just my opinion. So app const, oops, if I syntactically right, just to kind of look at this, const, this is no longer going to be a function declaration, but a function expression, const app equals, and then I can say with router and wrap this whole thing in as my argument that I'm passing. Wait, yeah. Hang on, equals, sorry, wait a minute. Is that right? Equals with router. Oh, and this is my function now, sorry. History, yeah. So this is now an arrow function expression, okay. I think I did that right. And now app actually got it this way. And this, to me, I find this more confusing, and I might have just screwed up the syntax. But the idea is you could put that higher order function here, pass in your component definition, or function expression is what it is in this case. as the argument to withRouter. Let's see if I broke that. Did I not break it? Or did I break it? Teams, go to Teams. Oh, I didn't break it, actually. So I actually got the syntax right. I find this more confusing. I much prefer to put my higher order stuff down here in the bottom line. That's just my personal opinion. That's strictly opinion. Just to me, like, this feels more familiar doing it that way. And by the way, it does not matter if it's a function declaration, which it is now, if it is a const app as a function expression, the original way with the keyword function, or whether it is an arrow function. It makes no difference as far as functionality within React. It doesn't matter. These are all the same thing. Cool. Great. Well, with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for participation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is an intro that you should be able to take this hopefully and apply it. You have the power to change your state wherever you are as a result of actions, to set some routes, to add some links, and remember to keep them restful as much as you can. Everybody take care. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Howard.
Bye.